Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the KAIJU Power Hour. This is episode number 2 out of NDA. I'm your host, Wedel, joined alongside Lemur and Ferny. How you guys doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing well. Just got done playing, 80 hours of Supervive, not Project Loki.
SUPERVIVE.
It was an
SUPERVIVE.
exhausting week, but I had a lot of fun. Kind of just relaxing on the Sunday afterwards.
Yeah, me too. Same deal. So
Well, today's a special day. We're joined alongside our guest, Bellissimoh.
Hey,
How
what
you
up?
doing, Bellissimoh?
Hey, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, man.
It's a pleasure having you come on.
thanks
We
for being
appreciate it.
here, especially on such short notice.
I was about to
Our
say,
bad.
thank you
No
for
worries.
short notice. We appreciate it. We're gonna get better. We're gonna get better with that.
We'll use the we didn't want to interrupt the devs during the playtest excuse. That's definitely definitely the reason.
Well, I mean, you guys have been supporting us, so it's only fair that we return the favor. So,
Well, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. We're recording this beautiful episode today at 12 p.m. PST, July 7th, 2024, post playtest. So without further ado, Bellissimoh, if you want to give a little introduction on yourself and what you do at TC, that would be amazing.
yeah, my name is John Bellis. I'm an executive producer at Theorycraft, working on SUPERVIVE. I've been with Theorycraft for about, I think, almost 3 years now. And before this, I worked at Riot for 11 years, mostly on League, but also on Valorant, and then some unannounced R&D projects. And then before that, I worked for another roughly 10 years working in game publishing for MMOs. So mostly like importing Korean and Chinese MMOs to the US. And that's how I got started in the game industry. I started in customer service originally.
Nice, awesome.
That is amazing.
Yeah, I did a little bit of research. I saw the dev diary for Perfect World.
Oh, man. Oh, quite the throwback, that one.
We saw
That was a
Belly
throwback.
15 years ago or whatever it was.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Watch some MMO videos around there. It was a great watch.
It was a different time.
For sure.
Yeah.
Definitely was
but-
a different time.
If you don't mind me asking, what do you like to do besides game dev stuff? I don't know much about you besides that.
Yeah, I mean, outside of game, obviously, play a bunch of games recreationally, but I think outside of gaming, probably the thing that I'm the most into is like, I think a lot of people that know me in my personal life know I'm like super into health stuff, like whether it be basically like, longevity, extending health span, that kind of thing. I think ever since I had our son, that's when I really wanted to kind of like change my health trajectory. And also I'm just like, I'm a very optimistic person, and I love studying things that might happen in the future, and being able to live as long as I can to see as much of it as I can is an interesting prospect to me. Yeah.
Well,
Cool.
health for
Nice.
myself. I like that kind of stuff. It's a fun thing to dive into. It is a really fun thing. But just coming off of your guys' biggest week of, I would say at least the past 3 years. You know what I mean? Like,
Definitely.
how was it? Not just from a developer standpoint, but like, from even just playtesting yourself, like playing the game with everybody. How was it?
Yeah, from a development standpoint, I mean, it was every time we've had like a major step change in audience, like it's always a moment that's filled with excitement, but also anxiety, And so I think going into it, yeah, a lot of us didn't get a lot of sleep that week or leading up to the announce and the beginning of the playtest. I think once it was out there and the response was so positive, I think that really like flipped things for a bunch of people on the team in a really great way. And I think we try to be really hard on ourselves, so it's always like this thing where internally you're like, I think the game is good, but I'm not sure. And whenever you do see a lot of players kind of validate that externally, it's like there's no better feeling in the world, I think. How it was like playing in the playtest, I think it was really amazing for me personally because I just have a lot of friends and family or ex-colleagues in the game industry who were able to, found out about it and came in and played, and like to get a bunch of people that mean a lot to me, or like reach out and say like, oh man, the game is awesome, or I had a lot of fun with it last night. Like that's a really motivating set of inputs that makes me excited to keep moving on with SUPERVIVE. Yeah.
Hell yeah. I extend that out to Ferny and Lemur as well. I mean, like, how was your guys' playtest? You guys are some playtesters too, right? How was the playtest for you guys?
It was really good. I played pretty much all of NA except for like the last day or two because I was just like so burnt out, and I have like Final Fantasy to do and like a billion other things. And it's like it was actually so much fun because I played with kind of a bunch of different groups of people again. I played with a lot of the EU people during NA, which was funny. And then I played with like the usual group with like Zek and Amir for a while on NA, and I had a lot of fun on Void even, which is crazy. So,
Ooh, that's what I'd like to see.
but yeah, it was also really fun watching, like being able to watch pretty much everyone that I know has been playing for so long, like actually physically see them play like during the test and stuff. Like I'd go out to like get water or whatever, or I wouldn't really play EU, and I'd be able to like, just like watch Lemur or watch like Wedel or literally anybody and play the game. And there's also so many VODs and so much content out there now. Like even
Yeah.
from the first week, I'm like, wow, I'm feasting. My whole YouTube recommended and like my Twitter is all SUPERVIVE now, which is really cool to see. So
Same
yeah,
here.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I mean that's close to how my playtest went. I started streaming like the day before the playtest started, kind of with the announced trailer and everything. And then, every single day after, the 15 hours a day of streaming, which was quite jarring from going from 0 hours of streaming. But I had a lot of fun. I think the playtest was really well. There was only like a few hiccups with the servers every once in a while, and I mean, I was pretty happy with everything overall.
Yeah.
I definitely didn't enjoy my time on EU sometimes, but on NA, I was like, this is a really good game, and I was having a lot of fun.
Is that mostly due to ping and latency?
Yeah.
Yeah, same here. I kind of stopped myself from playing EU so that I wouldn't get tilted for NA because I'm like, okay, the game's really good on NA. I have to come in fresh. Like,
Yeah.
It is pretty tilting when you're trying to pull off a play and you're like, I know I could have done this if it was on NA. Yeah.
Or you're like gliding and you know that you let go of your glider.
no,
and then-
literally that. Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
doesn't update fast enough, And
Yeah.
I also, like Ferny, took a little bit of break from EU. I had like going into it, guaranteed myself NA off with work, but I didn't want to guarantee myself off with EU because I tried to build this coping mechanism that EU is going to be fun no matter what every single time up to this point. And the last test
happy
I said
thoughts.
I can't do it. I just I can't cope with it anymore. So I said, okay, I will make sure I get NA off at least because I want to be able to play all the days where it's like it's a fun game. I could have a blast. And even on the last day, I didn't really play squads. I actually ended up playing duos with Kimmig, and we were trying to do some funny content strats. Like, we were splitting off. Like, I would go by myself, he'd go by himself, he'd be playing Brawl, I'd be playing Shiv. We'd be trying to do some 1v2 clips, like, trying to go for some fun content stuff. So, our last day, we actually ended up having a lot of fun, and, I thought I was like getting burnt out on the game. Lo and behold, I woke up missing the game. So, I mean, in the end, I think it was a fun week. It was definitely exhausting, but it was definitely a really fun week for me.
I slept for like 10 hours after it was off, after the servers were off. It was pretty nice.
Probably a good time.
Yeah.
Talking about the playtest, what was your guys' absolute favorite moment from the playtest? Do you have like a specific story, specific thing that you
I
can
do.
recall? Ooh, there you go, Lemur.
There was this one game where I got capture ball and I captured a jellyfish inside of it. And then I had angel wings, and I would angel wings into the capture ball and fly into the skybox, and no one could see me. And then I'd use my Celeste ulti and just fall on top of people's heads.
Oh my
And
god.
that was really fun. And then also winning back-to-back EU and NA show matches.
Mm.
That was That
was
made the
pretty sweet to watch.
playtest.
I was
That,
gonna
that
say,
made the playtest.
low key, my favorite moment was watching you win both of them. To be honest, it was the most memorable thing for me because I was able to actually watch you guys like play live, which was cool
Yeah.
from your stream. So that was cool. I had like both open on both monitors, and I was like, no, guys, they're fighting. Like, pan over. Like, come on.
It's very different because I actually watched a lot of Apex recently, and like watching the team's POV compared to like the caster's POV is like a different experience, and I think
Yep.
it's like a lot more enjoyable, at least for me, to like see the team's POV and their comms than a caster's POV.
Oh, so you're watching all the teams live while you're playing. So that's
Oh,
why
of course,
you
yeah.
ended up
That's
winning
yeah.
the show
I'm
match.
like, oh,
Okay,
The
wait,
faker tabbing between like
Tom
programs
King
and
is over
stuff.
here. Oh. Flappy's team. Oh, they're north of us.
He's got the multi-twitch on the second monitor. Like,
That's so funny. No, it sucks. I didn't get to end up playing the show matches, so I didn't get to contest Lemur. I guess he gets to go out there
Yeah,
and
I
win
get the
his
free
show
win,
matches.
yeah.
I'm just messing around. I had to end up working, but I think honestly one of my favorite days was the first day, and like that's like one of those times in gaming where I don't think I ever got up. Didn't get up out of my chair. I swear I didn't get up out of my chair, and I just played straight through the first day because it was all just one time slot, one straight through shot, and like that. I haven't done that since I think like there has to be some days like there's times I get up out of my chair, take like a 30-minute break, a stretch break, whatever. Did not whatsoever. Just straight played through.
Take care of yourself, man.
that's
No,
crazy,
no.
man.
It was good. It was fun though. I had a good time. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
you have those
yeah.
gaming experiences, but
Yeah.
You got anything exciting for us, Bellis?
I think for me, there was two moments that stand out. One, I posted on social media, but it was basically me and Safelock duoing, where we just got into a really close fight, and we barely survived. And then she was a Luna, so she was carrying me out of the storm, but we still almost died, and we were just like laughing the whole time. And it was just random because we were playing with a group, and then the group fell out, and we said, F it, let's play a duos. And it was just like a really fun and magical duos game. I think the other moment that stood out to me is I actually, I was playing with a bunch of different people, but there's one person who came in named 5up who, was putting his hands on the game for the first time. And going into that, you're never really sure how quickly or slowly somebody's going to pick up the game. And he started playing. He chose Void as his first unlock, and then he in his first game on Void did a swap into his E and killed somebody. I was like,
Nice. That's crazy.
I was just like, whoa, holy shit, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Like, yeah, I was ecstatic, and you could see this guy was just like, oh my god, holy shit, this game's crazy. So
Yeah.
those are probably some of my favorite moments.
It clicked as soon as they did that, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, there are times where I'm like, man, this game is so hard to pick up, and then there are other times where people just show up and just do it, and I'm just like, wow, hell yeah.
Really loved the montage, by the way. That was like I had to get that
Yeah.
song. Like I actually put that song in the playlist, by the way, because I just like I don't know, I just love this song
Wild
so
West
much.
Funk.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
so good. It was so good, so good. All right, go ahead.
I was just gonna say one thing I'm curious about is in terms of like Theorycraft and people there, how was the NDA drop? Was it like what you expected? Was it more than you expected? Less than you expected? Kind of how do you? I don't know. What were your reactions to it? I guess how did it go?
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of different things that we look at a moment like this. So like one thing that we look at is just like, hey, how many people actually like show up and sign up to play the game? We also look at, hey, there's a bunch of media that covered the game. What did they say? Is their sentiment largely positive or negative, or what are the themes that came out of that? We also look at like social media and just what people are generally saying about the game. And then, but probably one of the most important things is we look at, hey, like when people come in and play the game, do they continue to play the game or do they not? That's the one that is really going to determine whether or not the game survives or not. I think all of those, I think we were pretty surprised across a bunch of those. Like all of the media reviews were like, glowing. I think probably the most negative thing was like the name sucks. um, but even that person said that they were going to play the game a lot, so and showed up to play a bunch. I think the sentiment on social media, we were like really surprised how positive it was. I think a lot of it is attributed to folks like yourself or our existing community members and fans playing the game. And anytime somebody would be like, oh, this is just like battle royale, or hey, this is just like league, there'd almost always be somebody from our community that's in that conversation and saying like, hey, I disagree, or you should really try it out. And that was really meaningful for us. And then yeah, just like the engagement numbers were really good. I think we're really optimistic about where the game is at right now, and I think it's really reinforced our commitment to getting the game out as soon as possible. So I think we're really excited. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, a lot of those articles and a lot of the things, obviously, I had to watch the IGN video. I had to watch it. But I did read some of the other articles, and I was watching some of the other videos, and I was really, I think one thing that like shocked me, right? Like one thing that like put me out of the water is like, I have this blind faith, trust in you guys. I don't even call it copium, Some people, they'll call it copium. They'll cope about a game being good, right? But I got this faith, this trust I put in you guys, and I'm like, it's crazy that all these other people are just starting to do it, and it's just, I guess it's not crazy to me, but like I think of it as crazy because like it's so cool to see that and see like the positivity around it all. And like you said, I think it just comes from, I think a big thing is your guys' motivation is one, and I think again the community's drive to push for this really awesome game. That it's just so cool, and I'm like,
Yeah, and I mean,
sick
I
to see.
think to riff off of what you're saying, I think another feeling that comes from this moment from our team is, wow, there's like this meaningful step change in the number of people who are part of our community, which is exciting. But also there's a lot of people where this was their first playtest, and while it's great that folks like yourself or other players advocate for us and say good things about us and say trust, have faith, I think now like the thing that we have to do is we have to continue to show up for the people who just arrived. And so I think that's something that we take really seriously. Like, even though the results were really great for this playtest, like literally the day after the first day of playtesting, I was sitting down with SafeLocked and we were like, there's so much work we have to do. Like we have to there's so much we have to deliver on to make sure that all of the like players have higher expectations of our game now, I think, after they've played it. And so I think we have to work really hard to earn their trust, just like we have with you guys. Yeah.
Yeah. That being said, what do you think would, what are your concerns, I guess, that are gonna stop SUPERVIVE from like succeeding like on release or going forward from this? Because obviously it's blending a lot of stuff from other games, and I'm
Yeah.
sure that's probably up at the forefront, but I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think the thing that is the biggest risk for us is people looking at the game and making an assumption about what it is. Like I could see I saw a lot of conversation and comments of like, "Oh, this looks like League of Legends. Like it's just another MOBA." Or some people be like, "Oh, yeah, Battle Royale. I played that. So like I know what this is like, right?" Um and I think for people who do put their hands on the game and play it, I think they feel a meaningful difference. And something that we say a lot on the team is like execution matters. Like you can have the right idea, like the exact right idea that could be resonant with players, but if you don't execute on it well, like it could still fail. So, saying the answer to the core question again, I think the risk is that people will look at our game and think that they know what it is before they've given it a shot. Which is why kind of this approach of like building it with players like yourselves and building it with advocates. And I think the most compelling way to get into a game is when somebody you trust tells you that it's good, and they give you good reasons that sound compelling. And so that might be the way that we have to grow. Yeah.
Do you think that like having us players here who have played the game, for 500 plus hours, like hurts the chances of it succeeding at all? Because sometimes I think like whenever I see a game and I'm like, wait, this guy is like already so good at the game and I'm like so far behind.
Yeah.
Even if that's not really the case,
Yeah.
like
I think this is a really good question. And there's a couple of different facets to an answer that comes to mind. One is like, it absolutely helps us in that it helps us validate that the game can be played for at least 500 plus hours, if not 1,000 hours, right? Like if there are people who are still willing to play the game, even if they're playing the same hunter that whole time, like that's a really good signal that, okay, we have deep mastery and people like playing the game a bunch. Where it can hurt is it really depends on how the community or the experienced community, how they interact with new players. Like I've played games where the top tier of players gatekeep and, talk down to people who come in or tell them they're noobs and aren't inclusive and, aren't leaning towards, teaching and educating. And I think if our community really wants people to come in and learn the game, and I think that's been something we've seen this playtest is everybody's been making content and trying to help everybody kind of catch up. And so I think in that way it can absolutely help. And then I think the other thing that I think about related to this is it really depends on what the skill floor is of a game. I think if you have a game that has a really high skill floor, like I would actually say, what's an example of a game with a really high skill floor? Like Titanfall multiplayer actually had a really high skill floor. Also, the other one, the finals has a really high skill floor. Like games that have really, really intense mechanical hurdles that people need to get over. I think that just makes it really, really painful when people come in and they're playing against somebody who has 500 hours. Because then it's really literally impossible. And so, yeah. But in total, I think if our community welcomes people, I think it can be truly beneficial. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, speaking on that, right? There's a lot of different characters with like skill floors and skill ceilings, right? Like Strike and Brawl. Some performing on low end, some performing on high end. Is the goal for every character to be viable at the highest level of play? And this is from, I'm gonna try not to butcher this name.
Banzai on Reddit, I think.
Banzai on Reddit. Okay, good. I was
Yeah.
gonna try to do the whole name. I could do it.
Yeah, I think this is a great question. I think I'll share what our aspiration is. I think our aspiration is that, yeah, ideally somebody can come in attached to a given hunter and, play it for their entire career if they want to, right? And so I think what comes with that is like I think we do aspire to have them viable at all different MMRs. I think something that another part of our approach, our philosophy is like we don't necessarily think of them as like these are the newbie hunters and these are experienced hunters, but a way we frame it is like, hey, this hunter is a good landing pad for game X or game Y. So a good example of that is probably Ghost, where we're like, hey, he's a good landing pad for somebody that's from Call of Duty, right? Like if you're a Call of Duty player, you're used to, semi-automatic guns and grenades and things of that nature, and hopefully the play pattern is straightforward enough to where you can intuit, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do with the kid. And then yeah, we do also offer other hunters like Void and Brawl, where it's like, okay, there's some amount of like broad game knowledge that you need to have before you can really be effective on them. But yeah, I think our aspiration is to make sure that no matter what MMR you're at, that it should never be an invalid choice to play a given hunter. It may be more or less niche, but we aspire to be not doomed if you pick something. Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear you say that one of your people that you were playing with like picked up Void for the first time and like did a swap like that. That's
Yeah.
like that's pretty impressive. Like coming just into the game, because I was playing. I think the first like day of EU, I got like a couple of games in, and I was just solo queuing. And I got someone that I think was relatively new to Void, and we found a blink, and I was like trying so hard to explain. Listen, you need to go for this, okay? It will blow your mind, I promise. So it's really cool seeing that on the characters and stuff like that for sure.
Yeah.
I will say with like, I never even thought of like that as like the direction point. You know what I mean? Like I never thought, building a character so people from other games have these landing pads. Like I never even thought about that before. And like, cause like you always like think about like Void, and you're just like, oh, this poor guy. He's like kind of like he's like a MOBA character. You know what I mean? Like how's
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
fit? But it's like it actually is like a landing pad for people that want to come in and
Yeah.
play these specific characters. So that's actually like a cool new way. That kind of like actually changes how I do my feedback now on characters. like actually like mentally, it just opens up like, wow, wait a minute, I see
whenever-
now.
Yeah. Whenever we design a hunter, we always start from who is the audience? Like who do we think is going to be the person that's playing this hunter? And a lot, it can start from hey, here's a really interesting creative idea or concept, or hey, here's like a couple of abilities that we think are really dope. This could be the foundation of a kit. But we always still try to attach it to like, okay, all right, who is the player that's going to play this? And so, yeah, I think Void players, like a lot of Dota 2 players, find Void pretty straightforward, right? Or a lot of people who like fighting games or Smash really like Brawl, right? So we like to definitely think about who the audience is and where they're coming from. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I should probably play Brawl now that I think about it.
No, Ferny. No, Ferny. You should play.
Yeah, I saw your reaction there. You were like, what?
I was putting the pieces together because I hadn't heard them before, and I'm like, oh wait, no, this character is like an annoying mixed like fighting game character, like for sure.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, speaking of, you were kind of mentioning like how sometimes devs will, or designers will kind of like think of like abilities or features like before, kind of putting together a full hunter. Are there any like really cool like champs, hunters, abilities that have been like scrapped, but off the top of your head? And this is coming from the Max on Reddit as well. I know like Bungee Shot used to be on Huntress, and it used to be kind of similar to Gunslinger's Lasso. So I'm just curious if there's anything that comes to mind.
I mean, that one does come to mind. It's interesting. It used to be an ability that internally we called tether, which was you'd shoot an arrow, and it would, if it hit somebody, it would attach a tether to the ground, and then if they moved beyond a certain range, they would get stunned. When it first came in, a lot of people were playing with the kit, and I was like, wow, this is really awesome. And I think it was in either a veteran playtest, or there was some playtest where we had players come in and play. And very quickly we saw there's a lot of checkmates that happen with that ability. So like you would put it down and then immediately like knock somebody into abyss, and then they would be screwed effectively. And so I think there's a lot of cases where we get something in and we think, wow, this is really fun. And then it's only once we get to 20 to 50 hours on something internally where we're like, oh, actually this is busted. Like, yeah. Once you master it, you're like, oh, I'm not sure we can keep this. Yeah.
Everyone's starting with punch. Oh, man.
I
missed that.
unironically missed that. I really missed that.
Everyone else misses it. You know who doesn't?
Because you play Shiv, you don't need it.
This guy.
Yeah, I think I could definitely see the punch meta coming back as like a storm shift. That would be something that would probably be interesting.
That's actually we've talked a little bit in the Discord, and people have talked about like kind of SUPERVIVE on release and like it's gonna look like live service. And you just mentioned, oh, maybe punch will come back as like a storm shift. So is this something that you're thinking about, like when the game comes out? Are there going to be like seasons? Are there going to be, specific like power rotations? What does it kind of look like live service in your eyes?
Yeah, we've spent a good amount of time sketching out what we think our post-launch content looks like. Um, with the caveat there that they are our best guesses as of current. Of course, like we
Right.
will try things and then players will like them or not, and then we'll adjust as needed. But yeah, we think like an average quote unquote season, has some parts of the map changing, but probably not all of it. We want to be careful not to erode a bunch of mastery that players build. Um, it can be really frustrating if you feel like, okay, I'm finally like learning stuff, and then everything changes. So that's something that we learned a lot on League and operating League is, what's the right cadence of change. And I mean, for League, it was even more strict because of the really dedicated competitive scene. Um, so I think we might be able to be a little bit looser. We'll see. But yeah, I think the map should change a bit. There should be some new powers. There should be some new objective content. Also, every season will be, even right now, we're looking at like, okay, from a game systems perspective, what are the things that we think, could use some love or some updates? It's like, okay, we probably need some more exotic equipment. We probably need some updates to just equipment in general. Or, we're like examining pacing. Like, hey, is pacing in a healthy spot? Are there parts of the game that feel like they're boring or there's a lull? These are all things that we intend to like update continuously, on top of just adding more hunters and adding more skins and content.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm a big fan of seasons, so I'm excited to see what happens later.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I'd add at a high level is just like, yeah, like when League of Legends came out, I think something that was really awesome about it was it felt like, we were hitting like an impossible cadence at the time, like a champion every 2 weeks, which in retrospect was like insane. Um, And I don't know if we'll be that fast, but I do think that we want players to feel like, wow, especially at launch, like, man, Theorycraft is really doubling down and really like investing in the game and trying to make it better and adding new content. I think that's one of the most exciting times to be part of a game, and we want to kind of exceed players' expectations if we can.
Do you think a hunter in SUPERVIVE is like harder to make than a champion in League of Legends? Because I feel like maybe it is, but I'm not really sure.
I think so. And I'll give you my hot take as to why. I think Talich or JMO or a bunch of other people would probably give you a better answer, but I think my hot take is that, yeah, the game is very fast. And when the game is this fast and when TTK is also this fast, it, I'll give an example. Like for League of Legends, if a 1v1 lasts, you know, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, like there's a lot of room for variety there. But when that's engagement is like 5 seconds, you know, it becomes increasingly difficult to have things that like read and feel fair and feel varied. But that said, I think we've been blessed with the the designers that are on our team. They're really creative individuals and they've been able to make really crazy shit. And I think that the roster right now is a good mapping of what some extremes are, and I think there's a lot of space between all those extremes. Yeah.
So when's the next character coming out besides Stalker and Gunner?
Yeah, we haven't seen one in a while. It's been like probably a year.
Less than no, technically.
Well, I
less.
will say, yeah, one thing that we haven't stopped cooking on hunters. We just haven't exposed them externally. And also, I think that we'll probably still do things like veteran playtest where we expose prototype kits to players earlier with a smaller audience. For our larger playtest, especially because we have a much larger audience now, I think that the core audience that has been playing with us is like a very much what people call an early adopter segment, like people who are not as sensitive to bugs or graphical issues or graphical fidelity. I think as we expand and get closer to open beta, I think that sensitivity changes. So to say it back, I think in veteran playtest, you'll see us do the same stuff we've done and expose early. But I think for the bigger playtest, there's a there's like a higher bar to hit in terms of performance and bug free. Yeah.
Can't like put out a character like Beastmaster to 20,000 people, so that wouldn't go over too well, I don't think. But yeah, I figured you guys were cooking. I'm
We are.
excited
Yeah,
as
don't
well.
worry.
You talk about veteran playtests and like doing this kind of stuff. And a lot of AAA studios, they'll end up making like they'll make like a public beta environment, right? And they'll do something like that. Do you guys have any plans to possibly do something like that once you're fully out, like thinking ahead on it?
Yeah, that is something that we've talked about that we haven't like put any concrete plans to paper yet. I think post open beta is when we'd probably start thinking about that a little bit more. But right now we think that that veteran playtest would be sufficient for us to get the reads that we need. Yeah.
Yeah, because honestly, not a lot of studios have like gotten like outside people to playtest the game to this scale that you guys have. So
Yeah.
that's just something I'm curious about. Like as it goes down the road, like when are people just gonna get kicked out of the Discord? Nope, this is the game now. We're gonna do our thing.
Yeah. When is the feedback channel just disappearing?
Yeah, when's it getting nuked?
Because like League of Legends doesn't have a feedback channel, I don't think. Like I don't know. Like
Yeah. I mean, I do think building off of this line of thought, it gets hard as audiences scale, right? It gets really hard. Like the developer to player ratio, even just right now, is meaningfully different than it was 1 month ago, right? So I think we're going to do the best that we can to be as connected and keeping up conversation directly with our players in the community. It has not led us astray so far. We think it's a big reason why we're even as successful as we are right now. So we need to keep it up. But also, yeah, like when our goal is to like reach millions of players, right? And so in that scenario, you lose a little bit of control when the conversation is that big. So yeah, which is also why it's important that stuff like this, where we can talk to the community and like kind of reinforce an approach or a philosophy or a way of treating each other that we want to embody.
Yeah. The thing I, as like a player, like loves the most is just doesn't matter if it's like direct or what, but as long as like we kind of hear what the devs are thinking, and you guys have done like way higher than that, like for years. So I'm just saying that it is.
Thanks.
I'm appreciating it while it lasts, because I know it won't be forever. So.
do you guys have any concerns with like being more connected with the community and like the vulnerability of people like bringing hate comments and stuff to the developers? Because I feel like that's a big reason why a lot of other companies don't do it, is like, this guy made Zeri, everyone hate this guy and send him hate comments on Twitter. Is that something that you guys are worried about in the future? I think right now it's kind of been okay, but I think if you extend yourself out there, that's like what you're opening yourselves up to.
Yeah. I mean, just to like harken back to the time at Riot, I think, yeah, when you're serving an audience of millions, it can be really scary to say something in public and know that if you say the wrong thing, you could be held accountable to what you said, or you could create a bad player expectation, right? I think that for Theorycraft, one is like we do have a lot of really experienced devs, and devs that have thick skin, which I think helps. I think the main thing that we need to do though is like we need to engage with the community, and ideally you engage with the people that are exemplifying the behaviors that you want, that are like productive and not destructive and not toxic. I think something that I've seen a lot of competitive games do is there will be members of a community that are really loud or streamers, and they're really popular, and that type of content gets a lot of views, and a lot of people like that kind of stuff. And then developers kind of lean into it too, and that ends up setting an even stronger example for people to follow, and it becomes a vicious cycle after that. So I think part of the approach that we're going to take is, there might be a lot of different people who like our game, but I think when we try to lift up members of our community or promote members of our community, we'll choose the people that we think have the type of approach and personal touch that we think is important for the foundation of our community. Yeah.
Cool.
Even though it may be less controversial, people like a good hate stream, but
People do,
but
apparently.
yeah. We can't change the nature of humans and we can't change the internet, but I think for our corner of the internet, I think we can, choose how we want it to be.
Sweet.
Choosing with how you want it to be. This is actually, I think this might be the most serious question here. What's with all the Zoomer language? You know what I mean? Like the skibbity riz toilet. What's going on here, man?
Okay, right. Okay. So this is totally my fault. Okay.
It is?
So basically, all right. Let me where to start. So, we live on the internet. We see all the funny young slang these days, and basically, like, there was just a bunch of like people memeing on the team with different Gen Alpha slang, and then I just I was like, oh hey, it would be really funny if we just put this in the Hunter's Journey and put it on there, and then it was definitely a polarizing thing. There's some people who loved it, and there's some people who hated it. I think what I would do is I'd take a step back and tell people what our like long-term philosophy there is, which is like we want call signs to appeal to every generation, right? So like in the full release version of the game, we'll have call signs that are for every generation, whether you're a millennial, Gen X, alpha, boomer, whatever, right? We want our game to be really inclusive in terms of everybody, so we'll cater to everybody. It was just for this patch that we thought it would be funny and interesting to do, and
I thought it was funny.
I thought it was hilarious.
it sure did stir up conversation.
Yes,
So,
yeah.
But you can blame me if you hate it. That's fine. And there were some people on our team that were like, are we hello fellow kidsing people? But yeah, it comes from a place of humor and jest, not from trying to like pander or anything like that. Yeah.
I definitely saw like that. It was about humor and all that. I don't know if everyone else was seeing it, because I know there was some conversation in the feedback form about it.
Yeah.
My teammates, some of my teammates had Web3 Riz. I had Weeb Riz. My one teammate had Ohio Riz.
I think Web3 is really funny.
Web3, Web2 was hilarious in there, by the way. That was
Web2 is really funny.
that was good. That was good.
Shoe had Can't Stop Toilet. Like, it was great.
Just the combinations were great of the call signs.
The combinations were really funny.
Yeah.
I guess.
Oops, go ahead.
All I was gonna say was, I guess, speaking of like controversial stuff, getting into like a more serious kind of thing. So far, after 3 years of SUPERVIVE Project Loki, what do you think the biggest mistake has been so far, if there has been a mistake?
I think the biggest mistake. I think the biggest mistake has been waiting as long as we have for onboarding. Or more specifically, let me say it a different way, is like our initial approach to onboarding was, hey, let's make like a really heavy-handed tutorial. And also we tried to structure it in a way where it was like a story. And I think what we realize now is that when people are coming in, one is that they just want to play the actual game, right? And so I think something that we launched in this last patch was a thing called Beginner Storm Shift, where when you come in, if there's a certain number of new players in the game, you are just provided with a simplified version of Squads BR, where there's like all the powers are mostly passives and the vaults are easier and monsters are easier. and things are just simplified. You won't find things like teleport soul. Like it'll just be straightforward things like damage and armor. And I think the other one is like we haven't been focusing on onboarding for a long time because we've been focusing on making sure that we have a sufficiently deep game. Like I think if you wound the clock back 6 to 8 months from today, we were in a mode of, man, is the game good enough for you to really commit for 1,000 hours? I'm not sure. And so I think that's why we didn't focus on onboarding, because it's important that you get the game to the right depth first before you focus on that. That said, like I think we could have taken a different approach earlier and it probably would have been more successful, but you live and you learn. You try some things and they work, and you try some things and they fail. And I think now we have a much more effective onboarding approach for players, and hopefully it'll just continue to get better. And it needs to get better, especially as we get to bigger audiences for open beta.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how was the beginner storm shift like reception? Because obviously, I don't think we saw that. I'm curious to see like if that went over well, if people like that.
Yeah, so we do a couple of things. One is we run some beginner player labs where we bring small groups of new players in, and then we have them play, and then we just kind of have them record their games, and then we either observe them via stream or we watch it after the fact. And like before we had beginner storm shift, we just ran, like we would watch somebody play and we would write down, here's all the things that they get hung up on, and then that led us to, okay, let's try a simplified version of the game. One example is like, oh man, they open a vault and they're in that vault for like 3 minutes, like reading all the powers and like not even really knowing what they're supposed to do, or not even completing the vault because it was too hard, right? And so we use that to build beginner storm shift. And then also during the actual playtest, we spectate games. So we would spectate people who are playing at different MMRs, and we learn different things either at high MMR or for beginner storm shift. And I think what we saw is like so many more players were successful in their first game with the beginner storm shift. And I think that's a really important thing, is that whenever you're trying a new game, of course you want to win. That's the objective in most competitive games. But I think the really important thing is like you want a player to throughout the session be building confidence. It's like, oh, cool, I did a thing, I killed a monster and I got an item. Great. Okay. Oh, I found another player and I was successful. Awesome. And I think the more moments where they feel competent, that increases the chance they'll play the game again. And the more moments they have where they're confused, even if it's a small thing, like those things add up to where they're just like, I don't get this game, and then they don't play anymore.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Following Ferny's original question, what is the best thing? Single best thing? Then this could be your opinion, right? Because I think everyone on the team might have something different. Because I don't remember what the word JMO used a long time ago was, but there was a word like, we shouldn't remove that from the game. That could be our thing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't remember what it was called, but there was like something where it's, this could be it. This could be it. We can't remove it. How do we not know? Let's give it to the playtesters and find out if it's it. Like gliders. Who knew?
Yeah.
How'd you guys know? You gave it to us and you knew. So what would you think is the best thing?
I think it is not actually gliders, but I think it's spiking. Because before spiking, gliders were really cheesy. Especially because the game's like 2.5D, right? And it was really difficult to hit people and stuff. But I think as soon as spiking went into the game, it was like, oh man, like there is this whole new combat model when you're off platform that just plays so differently, and it really allows somebody to facilitate a 1vn, especially with most wanted. I think all of that combined has made it so that way, even if you're one player alone at the end of the game, there's still a chance. And I think that's a really important thing that supports the idea that, we don't want people to be in trapped games. When you're in a game and you're going to lose, that's the worst. And so, yeah. And also I think it's just like a really ownable moment for us where, something some people have said internally is like, it feels like our headshot. And headshots are really important in the FPS genre because they allow people to express skill and precision. And, spiking a lot and gliding, there is definitely a skill and precision in our game that you engage with when you're off platform. So it's definitely my favorite change.
I like that.
Nice.
I like that. I like spiking. I
like
got
that
spiked a
too.
lot for so many years, and then we asked for a glider. We asked for a glider keybind and a jump keybind, and we got them. And I've not.
Yeah,
I've been getting better at it. So
Yeah, and Chappelle GR said in chat, it makes even low damage characters have massive potential. That's like so true. Like it is the great equalizer amongst all hunters. And it takes some hunters like Seraph or Aluna, where you're like, oh man, I don't do that much damage with my autos, but man, she can really gun people down when she's over the abyss.
Yeah. I still have a clip where I void swap over an abyss, and then I send out 2 autos to spike 2 people, and then I get the third person chasing me. It's like so core to the game, Like I'm gonna say probably 60% chance if you're watching a SUPERVIVE clip, someone's getting spiked, at least
Yeah.
on social media now with NDA drop. It's
yeah,
there's something with spiking in it. So yeah, that's a really good point actually.
A long time ago, like maybe 2 years ago, the game was a lot different. It was more MOBA style, more battle right-esque, where the kill time was a lot slower.
Mhm.
Everything was slower. The projectiles were slower. What made you guys change to this more shooter dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, I think the short answer is people didn't like the old one, or they thought it was okay, right? Like people who played our game and filled out surveys, they were like, yeah, this game's okay. And we knew that for us to be successful and to survive, it's got to be more than okay. It's got to be a game that you give a shit about, right? That you really care about, and you're like, I want to play this game. And I think going through all of the verbatims and surveys and reading what people liked or didn't like, that's what really prompted us to say, okay, we need to sit down and just rip apart these kits and try something different. And our head of design, Mike Tipple, he just went into his lab and within a few days was like, okay, I've remade a couple of them, let's try them in playtest. And instantly everyone was like, whoa, this plays really different. And when we played with players for the first time after that, that's when we saw our survey scores meaningfully shift, and we're like, okay, this is the right direction. Yeah,
I remember that. That was a good test.
that was a death match.
That opened
right?
my eyes a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah.
I was like,
I feel
oh.
like if someone asked me the question of what was the best change that you guys did, that would be my answer, is that patch with that change.
combat
The
3.0.
Yeah.
That made me go from okay, trusting in the devs and what they worked on previously to being like, oh, they're making something really cool. And now I'm addicted. So that was a fun test. I
Yeah,
love
and
that
I think it was the beginning of a long trajectory of pushing the game to be more of a top-down shooter from there, right? That's where the philosophy around kit design for hunters really revolved around LMBs, where it was oh, let's make an LMB that's like the Needler from Halo. Let's make an LMB that's like a DMR, right? Let's make an LMB that's like Rocket Arena, Quake Rocket Arena. And that approach has continued to serve us really well. And I think that'll continue to be an approach for new hunters as we go forward.
That's awesome. One thing I actually was really personally curious about, and however much you can elaborate on. So we got the announcement. I don't remember what month it was. I think it was April or May, about the Korea, China, APAC, all that kind of stuff. What can you maybe elaborate on? What's going on over there? What's up? What's are they playtesting? Are they they getting into it? What What can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, so let's see. I'll say the core Theorycraft team, we are publishing the game in North America and Europe to start. There are other regions that we would like to serve, but there's only so many plates, that we can juggle at any given time. And as a dev team, we like to try to focus on a thing and do it well versus do a million things okay. And so we're only launching ourselves in those regions up front. We're working with partners in Korea and China, Nexon and NetEase respectively for each one. And they're running the publishing and operations for the game in those regions. So they each have their own separate timelines in which they're going to publish the game. But yeah, there's some testing that happens through them. At this point, it's a lot of early testing or internal testing. But yeah, we're really excited to publish the game in those markets. We know from operating League of Legends that Korea and China are really important regions, not just because of the number of players there, but because the competitive tastes are different in different regions. And so we're really excited to see how Chinese players and Korean players like the game and kind of what are the nuanced differences in their competitive scenes versus ours. Yeah, that's always been really fun on League, so I'm looking forward to that.
How would the feedback, do you think the feedback would vary? Do you think it would be kind of different, and then maybe how you bounce the feedback between maybe the NA, EU, different regions in testing? Would you bounce that differently internally?
What I'd say based on my experience is when it comes to core gameplay, the needs are pretty similar. When it comes to thematic tastes and aesthetics that people like, it can be quite different. North America and European players, and even South American players, typically like to have, either more unique characters or more monstrous characters. Whereas in Asia, historically, it has felt more aspirational men and women or humanoids are typically more popular. But yeah, I think when it comes to how the game plays, I haven't yet seen a meaningful difference. Yeah.
I like that.
When's Death Knight coming out?
I
I gotta know.
Death Knight fan?
Yes. Just a little bit.
All I can say is we are working on multiple hunter kits right now, so don't you worry.
Okay. Okay. Sounds fun.
Ferny really wants his Death Knight.
What do you want out of Death Knight?
Drain tank.
What?
Drain tank.
Okay.
Yeah, and the aesthetic. I like the aesthetic a lot.
Okay. The actual the concept that we had for it at the time.
Yes. Literally. Yeah.
Okay. Noted.
I was a big fan at the time, and I didn't get to grind that character a lot. And then she disappeared, and it's been 2 years, and I'm like,
okay. Yeah.
I want to see more, melee characters, more tank and support characters, kind of more, stuff that's not just killing people basically, and providing util and stuff, because I really vibe with those characters a lot. Sorry, vibe. But yeah, I'm just excited. I'm waiting for more hunters that I can do.
Don't worry, we got you.
Awesome. Good to know.
A big question I got in my stream from a bunch of new people playing the game is they're like, can I play solo queue, or how is the solo experience? Because they don't have a bunch of friends that they want to play test with at a certain time. I think as the game releases, it'll get better, more friends available and times are better. But I think a big concern is people are wondering about solo queue or a solo mode. Do you think that's something that SUPERVIVE might do? I'm not sure it's the best, but
yeah. Let me answer this question, but first providing some context and foundation. So anytime we have multiple queues, the cost of doing it is matchmaking health, right? And that's because, let's say we had solos today, there'd be some percentage of people who would play that instead of playing squads, right? And so you end up splitting your audience into multiple matchmaking buckets, which means inherently like matchmaking gets worse. So to use an example, let's say we had only squads and then we launched solos, and then let's say, half of the people who are playing in squads go to solos. That means that your matches might take twice as long to match, or the difference in MMR in your games might be twice as big. So with that, like we do consider solos, and we even also consider trios. I think what we need to see is we need to see a launch concurrency that's really healthy, where we feel like, oh man, yeah, we have so many people playing that we can introduce these other queues and not incur any type of meaningful damage to the quality of queues in those other game modes. That said, I think there's more room for us to do something like that on an event basis. Like we could have like solos weekends or something like that. But I think the answer I'd give to that person is like, ask us again post launch, and then based on how we're doing, I think the answer will be really clear to us. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Crew HS asked us from Reddit, so ask again.
Ask again
I
at
was
the
gonna
end of the
say,
year.
I think I mentioned it one time about the squad fill mode where you could like do like squad fill or no fill, right? And you could like solo queue into a squads match because like from Fortnite days, obviously aiming's a little different than necessarily ability using, and like a lot of the systems that are in your game are very different with having a squad or not. But
Yeah. And I mean, and on the topic of fills, I think that's a good example of how it could damage matchmaking again. So like you would imagine that anybody who's solo right now, they're queuing into duos or squads, right? In a world where solos exist, they should probably go play solos. Like that'd probably be the best experience for them. But then that means that there would be a bunch of teams of 3 that are queuing up in squads, and there's no one to fill their spots. So that's where it really hurts the most, when you can't match people that are different party sizes. Yeah.
Makes sense. All right. Speaking of queue health, custom games. What do you think about custom games for next playtest? There's a hot topic. A lot of people want it. Don't know
Yeah.
if it would be good for the playtest.
Yeah. So we know there's a lot of demand for custom games, which is why we started prioritizing it in the last couple of milestones. I think we're still probably going to restrict it for the use of show match or for a limited use for content creators. I think that if we made it widely publicly available, we're not sure what the impact to queue health would be. So I think that's again a scenario where it's like, okay, hey, let's make sure that we get to a healthy concurrency, and if we feel good about that, then we can entertain the idea of turning on other things and letting people play other things. But then, it's like now there's the question of like, hey, is it more value to players to turn on customs, or is it more value to turn on solos? Those are the things that we have to like consider and weigh. But we definitely hear that people want customs, and also, we're really excited for giving people more agency to configure and change their customs how they want. Just because like a bunch of us play Smash Brothers, and like I think what's really fun about Smash is you can have custom rule sets with your friends and try out different things, and we want to have that same type of experimentation loop with our players. It's also really likely that players will find combinations that we should just make storm shifts or things like that. So
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think a lot of the sentiment from people that have been playing for a while is they feel that not the time of the matchmaking, but like the quality of some of the games is they'll have like 2 or 3 teams that are really really good, but then they just kind of go around chasing each other a lot of the games or stomping new players, and that doesn't feel good for the new people or the people that have been there. And I've seen a few people like they aren't sure if their feedback is because of the matchmaking, and it's like, okay, cool, the game comes out, doesn't matter, because it's a play test, or if it's actually something with the game. So I think that's a lot of sentiment people want behind custom games, even me partially, but I don't know if that's a slippery slope, I think, to kind of go down. So
Yeah. I do think that that is a valid use case that we need to think more about on our end, which is like, yeah, the top of MMR is a group of sharks. You know, would it be beneficial to just have all those sharks play together in a custom lobby and kind of have that close-knit community feel? But then, you know, the reality is you can make some other group of sharks that's a little bit underneath that, but it's probably maybe not as bad. We'll see.
Yeah.
Or if one shark doesn't play in the
Yeah.
shark tank, then they're the king shark.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. You know what I mean? Like, listen,
There'll always be somebody. Yeah.
Does that
But yeah, we're excited for the potential of custom games, and I think as soon as we think we can responsibly empower players with it, then we will. Yeah.
Okay.
does that expand out into, I guess, because obviously, you know, you're going to put things forefront. My favorite quote, by the way, and I did see this on Twitter, it was from somebody else that responded on Reddit. It's like, oh, where's the roadmap for this game? I really like the broad answer where it's like, they're just improving everything constantly and just going for it. And like, that's the greatest roadmap to ever hear. It's like, we're working on everything. Cool. What, in the thought process of that, has there been talk about any other game modes? Because we have tested a few here and there, right?
Yo, 20v20, the return.
Hey, who knows? That was a fun time, you know. I had a little fun.
ARAM?
ARAM.
Is there any talks or thought processes behind any other game modes outside of what we have accessible to us now?
Yeah. So I'll give two different answers here. One is like what the actual roadmap is, and then also on game modes. So like what the actual roadmap is it's basically, you know, getting the game to a quality level that we are confident we could ship at, like getting performance better and better so that way it can run on better machines, making sure that, you know, we're confident that we're going to run on the hardware that we need to run on, that is like economic and viable as a business. Also, we need to make a bunch of content, so like skins, finish hunters. There's a lot of things that are at, you know, what we call blockout quality, or like, you know, they have a first pass across every discipline: VFX, sound effects, animation, etc. But, you know, we need to do another pass to kind of bring them up to par. And then the, you know, getting new content ready for season 1 and making sure that when we come out the gate, like that everyone's eating really well. In terms of new game modes, yeah, that's something that we are including in our post-launch roadmap, or that we think about for our post-launch roadmap. Have we committed to a specific mode yet? No. What would that look like? Is it would probably look like us saying, okay, hey, let's try a mode a la 20 versus 20. And, you know, we just did a, you know, really rough pass the first time. Like, okay, let's go in and like kind of quote unquote make it real, or make some changes to it that we think would make it more playable. What we found from 20v20 when we tested it was really, really fun the first time you played it. But then like after an hour or two, or even maybe even less than that, it kind of got stale. But there could be ways where we could make that more interesting, right? You know, there were no objectives in it. There's really no structure to the game. So I think if we do bring a mode back like 20v20, we would do another pass to make sure that it has some additional longevity. Yeah. And not just purely not just it purely being novel. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think with the introduction of custom games, like eventually people can also make modes like that, so that you
Yeah.
guys, you know, don't have to put time into, you know, making 20v20 when it's probably not going to be very good anyway, like long term.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and there will be people making like crazy stuff like that anyway. So
I'd love to see like a gun game version of SUPERVIVE where like
Oh.
you kill someone and it changes your character to the next character, and then you have to kill someone and it changes to the next character. I think that would be pretty fun. But I try to do that in practice tools sometimes for like 1v1s, and then I go to the next character and then the next character.
Who would the last character be? Because usually
Oh
it's
yeah,
like pistols or knives at the end of that. So
yeah. Ooh, I guess it would be a Luna, but like she's not even that hard to kill.
Wait.
So maybe
What if
Void
it,
with only LMB.
Death Knight with only LMB?
I'm down for that.
Leon. It's Leon. We know who it is. Spin to win, Leon.
All right, I think we're close on time here, so we don't want to
Yeah.
keep you too long.
we have the final question.
A final question.
The final question. So we just had our NDA drop. We already entered alpha for a bit. You guys announced that it will be open beta by the end of the year. So like, what are the things that you guys need to do or that we should be expecting for open beta? Like what are like the things that you guys are trying to get done?
Yeah, so I mentioned some of it already, which is like there's a lot of art that is still at an earlier stage of fidelity and quality. We need to push a lot of stuff to a higher quality bar. And also I mentioned performance, like it performs okay now, but we're trying to hold a really high bar as a competitive game. We want to make sure that people feel like it's buttery smooth and that when you press it, it does what you want it to, that you fight other players and not the game. Outside of that, there's a lot of work that we need to do on the meta progression side. Like we do, you guys may have seen some stuff like Hunter Mastery quests that appeared. And we do plan on having a more involved like system where you can kind of level up as a hunter and kind of be like, hey, I'm this level on Kingpin or whatever hunter that you main. And then also having some like rewards that go with that. And then we also, we need to work a little bit more on like, whenever new seasons drop, like of course we'll have new content, but we want there to be like a meta system that you're engaging with on a per season basis that feels like, some players will really care about ranked and that'll be the way that they feel progress. And then other players want to feel progress in other ways, whether that be in a completionist sense or, accomplishing goals, things like that. So we want to make sure that we have a lot of different people's needs covered.
Yeah. I saw the Void. I got the first Void one. I didn't realize there was a second one. There was like 150 swaps. I'm like, oh, okay, that's not too bad on enemy players. And then I got it, and it was like, okay, now do 1,000 swaps on enemy players. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me! Like, I would have tried hard at that like the whole week if I knew. But so I'm a fan of them. I'm a fan of them.
Yeah, and I think people have seen, our in-game UI change pretty dramatically over the previous months, but I think there's a lot more time that we're going to spend on the out of game. We need to update things like match history, stats, like your careers page. There's a lot of work that we need to do. Even like loadouts and how you equip all your different either gear or cosmetics. Like we need to improve all of that. So you can expect to see that stuff improve pretty dramatically.
Super excited. I love saying that. I'll say it.
You're
every
gonna say
time.
Vive.
Yeah, me too.
Super Vive. Super excited for everything. Bellissimoh. I assume we have nothing left. We just had our last question. So wanted
We're
to say
closing out. Give him
thank
Do you have any
you.
questions, Belly?
Oh, true.
That's true. Do you have anything for us?
Or any topics you wanted to talk about?
I think from each of you, I hear from Ferny that Death Knight is the hunter that you want, but maybe, yeah, what gameplay kits or gameplay fantasies do you think are missing from SUPERVIVE that you'd like to see in the game?
Okay.
Wedel, you go.
I will say I'm a very wide variety spread guy. Like I really love like Lee. I'll use Lee because Lee's best example. I've played Warwick. I've played Syndra. I've played Garen. I've played Vayne. I have played Evelyn. I have played it all. And I will say, I think what I really enjoy about that is being able to go through the variety. And I think the variety is getting there. I would love to see that evolve. So more hunters of like these different types, right? Like just because you have two assassins in the game, right? obviously Stalker still being through the works, right? Just because you have 2 assassins doesn't mean they can't be 2 different types of assassins, you know what I mean? Like Stalker does what he does with his clone and with his execute, but another assassin could do something where it's like Evelyn, you know, where it's like they have to like slowly build up to this point where they get close enough and then they suck them, they pull them in and like boom, explosion. So I think like what I'd like to see is like take what we have and evolve it, you know, like Shiv and Gunslinger, you know, like they're like two of the same coin, right? But they play differently. So
Okay.
an evolution of like what kits we've already seen, maybe.
Okay.
I think I'd like to see another controller. So
Hmm.
something that I can play besides Celeste and Void.
Yes, please.
Because I like playing controllers. And then I'd also want to see like an easier healer that is more akin to something like Mercy or something from Overwatch, that people who are new and pick up the game have an easier time grasping, because I've seen a lot of new players pick up the game, they want to play support, and it's like a lot. It's a lot of things they had to learn, and I feel like it's kind of. I think the game. I don't necessarily want to play that character, but I feel like the game is missing that.
Yeah, I think we've heard that request as a pretty common theme, so that is something that we're thinking about. I have a different question, which is like, yeah, if you could have a skin for your main, you know, what would it be?
I think like a lifeguard void would be really funny. And you whirlpool people and you like throw beach balls.
That's a good idea, actually.
I've always thought about that. I thought that'd be really funny.
I really like the vampire theme, but I think one thing that would actually be really cool, and like, I think the Oath skin is actually really sick, and it like has this like project feel to it, but it's like unique. I think like getting a certain amount of hunters to all have that type of skin would be sick. But one skin in particular, one thing that would absolutely blow my mind would be some like mythical, like even if the character is not like magical, just like some magical like mythical
Like high fantasy stuff.
Yeah, like some really high level fantasy, like
All right.
something like out of like, I don't know, anime is the best example I can use because I think about anime whenever I think about like something mythical. So maybe something mythical for Shiv, like something that's out of character, just like
Make Shiv like a high elf in medieval fantasy.
Exactly, is using like
she has 2 like staves or something.
Yeah, they're like shooting out guns like that. It would be kind of sick.
I think for Celeste, I would choose something like a magical girl Celeste, like Star Guardian type style. I think that one would sell a lot, and I would like it. So
I'd buy it.
yeah,
I'd buy it on 2 accounts.
I'd buy it. That's great.
yeah. I feel like it's like obvious though. I feel like you guys probably already know.
Yeah, I do think that. I mean, she is a magical girl, so it would make sense that having a skin theme that embodies that or brings it to another level. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah.
Also, there's a ton more suggestions in the chat. You know. Project Shrike, Blue Lightning Jewel,
Dark Cosmic Illumina.
I think a kaiju line would be kind of interesting on characters that aren't, you know, like Kingpin, like aren't already kaiju, and they're like a lot of purple monstery effects. I think that would be a pretty baseline one to go for.
I'll hit you.
Yeah, I mean, folks have seen a couple of skins that we had in the last playtest. Our next one should have a lot more. So there's a bunch of stuff that's in the works that players haven't seen yet, but I think we're going to be doing, you know, more and more tests where we expose more of the content, and then getting people's feedback on whether or not they like it. So
when can I pay for the game? Like, when can I buy the skins?
when can I spend money on this game that I've spent 500 hours in?
Yeah, I think the soonest that would be is probably closed beta. Like, I think during closed beta, at least, you know, what we've tentatively talked about, this isn't a commitment, but we've tentatively talked about letting players purchase content during closed beta. And then, you know, at the end of the beta period, we would credit you back. Okay, here's all the money that you spent. And then you can choose to buy the same things again, or you can choose to buy something else. But that's probably when. Yeah.
Cool.
Sick. Super excited. Do you got anything else for us, Bellissimoh? Is that good for you? You ready?
I think I think the only other thing that I'd say is, yeah, like I really meant it earlier when I was expressing gratitude for, all of you guys and all of our players who have been supporting us. It's truly meaningful when we're reaching bigger and bigger audiences, and it does feel like there are people who kind of have our back and trust in us as a development team. I think I say this a lot. You've probably seen me say this hundreds of times. Like, we are a small studio, and so every bit of support really helps us. We're not a game that has a massive IP that everyone cares about already. We're not a massive game publisher that has giant eyeball cannons, or we can't spend hundreds of millions of dollars to like market the game and just make sure that everybody sees it. So that's why things like this, and that's why the support of our players really matters to us. So I just want to say thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. You guys, your
Thank you
your
guys, yeah.
motivation, like you're giving us something to support. So it's like it's a double-edged sword, We'll support something as long as you're giving us something. You know what I mean? Like we're going back and forth here, and you're giving us something. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, thanks. We'll keep doing the best we can. So thank you.
We appreciate that. We appreciate that. Well, thank you again, Bellissimoh, for coming on. We greatly appreciate it. On short notice and on your rest weekend. That's what we said.
True. On a Sunday.
On a Sunday.
Anytime.
So
We
Anytime.
appreciate it.
We appreciate it. As always, guys, we love the support. We love the feedback. So leave it in the comments down below. Give us anything, that kind of thing. Definitely, for sure, everybody, go check out this guy's strike montage. I think you posted on Twitter,
Sure.
correct? I think I saw
Yeah,
it
I
on
did,
Twitter.
yeah.
I'll get the link right now.
Yeah. Well, make sure you go check out this guy's montage of Shrek. The song is amazing. Great choice. Best choice I've ever heard for a song. Thank you all for listening, who's listening live, and those who are watching the VOD here afterwards. The next Kaiju Power Hour, we want to try to get this consistent schedule of going, but we're still trying to figure that out and work out the kinks and everything. So if you don't hear from us next time, it will be before the next playtest. You can follow us on our Twitter to keep updated with us at any given point in time. That's all I got from me. Take care.
That's all we got.
Awesome. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thanks,
Yep,
everybody.
thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
See ya.